Hello, everyone, and welcome to our special live broadcast on CoinDesk. We are on the CoinDesk homepage and across all of our socials, and today we are exploring a future that is not imagined, it's already here. We're diving into the intersection of crypto and AI, which is reshaping how we think about trust, value, creativity, and more. I'm Jen Sanasi. I'm going to be your host today as we explore AI through a crypto lens. We'll be talking all about policy, regulation, trading bots, markets, and even sports today. Our first guest joins us now, Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council Geoeconomic Center and former White House Special Advisor, Carol House. Carol is kicking us off today. Hey, Carol.
Hi, good morning.
All right, we are talking about the intersection of crypto and AI, like I've just introduced. For everyone who's watching, if you have questions for our guests or comments, feel free to drop them below this video. Carol, my first question for you is, what do you think of the current administration's approach to crypto and AI?
Well, it's a great question, since I think there's some really interesting nexes, right, between these technologies. They're both general purpose technologies. They both have some applications that have been explored, decentralized networks for a long time, but specifically now with things like DLT, and now with the advent of generative AI and agentic AI and just really sophisticated models, and now democratized access, especially to them. Some things that are really special and innovative, both on the challenges and the opportunity side. So this administration has really focused on an industry first and a deregulatory approach on both sides. So really focusing on messaging around competitiveness. I do think some of the measures that have been taken present some challenges around making sure that that competitiveness is in responsible and secure AI technology as well as blockchain. I think there's some interesting tensions back and forth between how do you deal with deregulation, but also ensure that you have the security and safety that you want in these emerging technologies to use. So there's some measures that have been promoting some of that, like innovation, and trying to make sure that we don't stifle some of the best minds and making sure that we're exploring cool applications, but then also by drawing back investment in R&D and focusing on standards and not, leading the way in international standards bodies, potentially endangering the ability to make sure that the U.S. voice and expectations for technologies that leverage infrastructure and provide services that transcend borders are done so in a safe and secure way. So I think there's some interesting positives and also some areas of concern that I have, but that hopefully will be addressed.
Carol, you were an advisor to the last administration, which, was a little bit more cautious, I think, when it came to the approach for both crypto and AI. Talk to me about some of those challenges you're outlining now, because I would assume that you err a little bit on the cautious side, given that you were advising the previous administration.
Yeah, that it's fair to think about that. National security folks often see worst case scenarios and recognize that. And I came from FinCEN also, where we regulated and tried to combat money laundering and like really massive and pervasive threats that have been exploiting certainly cryptocurrency in certain ways, like ransomware that's taking down hospitals, North Korea funding their proliferation activities through over $1 billion hacks, like the recent Bybit hack and others that have occurred over the years. So issues around security and trying to mitigate the greatest harms against the nation's greatest threats have been at the heart of certainly areas where I've advised. I do think, though, that the prior administration and the executive orders that we issued on digital assets was very acknowledging of the positives and the opportunities in the space, while also highlighting the risks. You're right that I think under the Biden administration, for both of these emerging technologies, you definitely saw a more risk-based and like proactive oversight and regulatory kind of approach, focus on things like civil rights and ethical use of AI and application of the technologies, and then focusing on international discourse and standards necessary to promote security and safety. So there was a lot more focus there on recognizing the challenges that we had, like with the advent of the internet, when we didn't build in building blocks for things like security and privacy initially, and then had to kind of patch on fixes on the back end. There was definitely a more proactive focus on defending against the greatest harms of the technologies there, versus the more deregulatory approach. I think, under the prior administration, there was a lot that we were doing to try to enable partnership between both sides, but then also some challenges that were presented where there wasn't a clear pathway to registration and oversight, and not getting stablecoin legislation in place. There were a lot of things that still prevented some of the ways for the responsible actors to be able to operate in the ecosystem. So I see there's really challenges on each side. I don't think a totally polar position on either way of ignoring the benefits that innovation from industry brings as benefit, but also ignoring the role of the government to promote positive direction and incentives in the ecosystem that we want to reap the best benefits for society, and also to mitigate the greatest harms. Ignoring that role, and incentives that are both carrots and sticks, is also important. So I think meeting somewhere in the middle is the most effective policy.
Let's talk about that. Given your background, how should we be thinking about the balance of national security and innovation and welcoming business to the United States? And I ask you this because there was a report done by Stanford recently saying that the US's AI lead over China is shrinking. And so talk to me about balancing that national security and innovation on American shores.
Yeah, which is a great question, because ignoring the massive benefits that the U.S. reaps by being the home and the hub for innovation, whether in finance and reinforcing our central role in the financial system, through ensuring that we have competitiveness in digital payments, including crypto, and then also on the AI side, massive potential economic benefits, not to mention also military benefits. I was an Army officer that can come from making sure that those national security applications are there. I think it is absolutely critical for making sure that where I think that democracies and capitalist markets are really created not to scale government, but to scale industry. It's why the US is the home for some of the best innovation in the space, making sure that we don't stifle and put on too many guardrails that prevent those kinds of experimentations and applications that are necessary to maintain that cutting edge advantage. I also will note, though, that if we don't ensure that, part of that balance, I think, is making sure that the government is playing a role to put in place things like security. Nobody likes getting robbed, right? We're saying, exchanges don't like getting hit by Lazarus Group and having their funds stolen from them. And we don't want, the same AI tools that can be used to automate coding and to do patch management and to create really cool and interesting applications can also be used by illicit actors to automate malware generation. And the same advanced protein models that can create vaccines can also be used to generate bioweapons. These are some of the fears and the concerns on the national security side, that if we don't make sure that there's responsibility and ethical use and development of the technologies, then that's where all the concerns on the national security side really arise. So I think that it does demand accounting for both, and thinking about that on the competitiveness side. We need to not put shackles on our industry, but instead help guide, create some guardrails and define a North Star, and then make sure that we're not focusing too much on sticks, but also on carrots. And I think that things like standards are a wonderful example of a carrot and a place for the government to be able to work with industry to help define what some of those North Star areas are. That, a lot of these developers are patriots too. They also want to stop illicit actors that are exploiting their technologies.
All right. And lastly, how do you think, make sense of this for me, wrap us up here. How do you think that policymakers should approach this? We've seen the steps that are being taken for crypto. Our audience really follows that. We've been following that very closely here at CoinDesk. What do policymakers need to take into consideration as they develop these frameworks, like you've just mentioned, as they create policy to keep that innovation on American shores and consider national security at the same time?
I think balance is a critical one, on these issues. I'm concerned about a shift away from things like enforcement and standards, and a massive rollback of things like R&D and staff and people that are supporting massive grants or standards work and research and development in secure applications of the technologies. We need to make sure that we understand where there's a good place for the government to insert itself, because the government has often been a driver at the frontier edge of really cutting edge technologies. So I think that we need to make sure that we've got the balance, that the government is really leaning in on making sure that we're helping to identify those building blocks where the government is uniquely positioned to want to defend Americans and industry. And I think enforcement is a part of that, like whether it's self-regulation and promoting that with the industry, or doing it through the government. Like there's a lot of illicit activity that is exploiting these technologies to hurt Americans and to benefit our greatest adversaries. We need to make sure that we're not ignoring that. We need to be proactively addressing it. So I hope that policymakers will keep in mind a lot of those illicit activities that are occurring and not ignore them. And which is, it's a critical part of any framework. You have to have that balance on each side.
Carol, thanks so much for joining our stream today and providing that insight.
Stay ahead of the markets with the Crypto Daybook America's newsletter. Get daily price updates, key trends, and analyses delivered straight to your inbox every morning at 7 a.m. Eastern Time. Sign up now at coindesk.com/newsletters.
All right, before that little ad break, we were talking to Senior Fellow at Atlantic Council Geoeconomic Center and former White House Special Advisor Carol House. I should note that CoinDesk did reach out to the current administration to join the show or provide written commentary. They were unable to accommodate an interview and have not yet responded with a statement. Okay, if you are just joining our live stream, we are talking all about crypto and AI today. We are covering it via a bunch of different angles. So stick with us. If you have any questions or comments, put them below this video. We are able to see them in real time, and we will do our best to get to them. Up next, we are talking all about the markets with Theory Ventures partner Spencer Farrar. Spencer, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jen, thanks so much for having me.
Of course, thanks for being here. Now, we were talking about AI and crypto from a policy angle just now, but we can't ignore the markets. They have really been volatile for a number of different reasons, but let's just focus in on AI right now. When it comes to AI-related cryptocurrencies or AI equities, what are you watching?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's been a wild past couple of days, obviously. We focus on private markets primarily, and so really we're meeting with entrepreneurs who are innovating kind of at the intersection of AI. Our firm focuses a lot on both traditional AI and AI within crypto. Things that are exciting to us, look, I mean, I think every business over the next 10 to 15 years becomes a business powered by AI. And so specifically within crypto and AI, we're seeing a lot of innovation more recently coming out of some of the foundation labs on some research. T-Loco is a paper that came out of Google recently. And so we're starting to see people who are training models in a decentralized manner. And so there's been some great innovation there. I think historically what we've seen over the last year or two has been mostly kind of chat bots, trading bots. So a lot of tooling infrastructure on that side, but we're starting to see people with great pedigrees come into the market. And we actually just backed a company with someone who has a master's in NLP. They come from a high frequency trading background. And so I think in terms of the talent that's starting to come into the crypto space, we're seeing a pretty significant increase there. On the equity side, I mean, when we look at the equities market, I think there's been a lot of concentration into a handful of names. And a lot of that is in part because companies are staying private longer. And when companies stay private longer, there's not a lot of access for AI exposure within public markets. And so you saw very lofty valuations within a handful of names. But for us, again, kind of, we're really just focused on entrepreneurs who are at the formation stage of their business. And so we're a bit disconnected from the public markets. And I think it can be a sigh of relief, especially in times of volatility like we're seeing over the last few days.
I know you just said that you're a bit disconnected from the public markets, but I got to ask you just a follow up based on what you just said. Are you thinking that maybe people are a little over-indexed in these AI-related equities, looking for exposure to this thing that's become really exciting and taken over the headlines recently?
Totally. I think, if you look at the Mag 7, it was responsible for most of the returns over the last year. And I think crypto potentially offers an interesting opportunity for investors, which is a lot of folks want exposure to AI, but given that these companies are staying private for so long, it's difficult to find that. And so tokens offer an interesting investment vehicle, which is you're able to get access to projects much earlier in their valuation life cycle. And so really, we do think that people are constrained, right? If you want AI exposure, there's only a handful of names. Microsoft, Google, Facebook, right? These are all big companies. And so some, I think, retail investors may have interest in investing in tokens specifically related to crypto and AI.
What are the most exciting AI developments for you lately as an investor? And I ask you this because, you mentioned for so long chatbots were a thing, right? Everyone was incorporating chatbots into their business model. Now we're talking all about AI agents, which maybe is an iteration or two of chatbots. But what's the most exciting AI application for you? If you think towards the future and you think to how businesses might be implementing the technology a ways out.
Yeah, look, my framework for this is kind of similar to how trading in the equities market evolved over time, right? So in the equities markets, you had most trades occurring in a manual way, and then a lot of that order flow has now moved to automated trading. And so I think similarly, what we're going to see really is that most businesses move from manual workflows to automated workflows, and a lot of that will be in part because of agents. And I mean, just to kind of touch on like some of the areas that we focus on, we're typically looking for kind of three things within a market when we get excited. The first is that there's turmoil in that market, right? It's difficult to staff. It can be a tedious job. Maybe it's a repetitive task that people don't want to do. The second is that there's a large labor budget. And so we really do think that agents and AI will be able to capture some of that budget over time. And so then you can build really big businesses. And the third is really the potential to kind of reinvent these workflows. And so those are the three things that we're kind of like very focused on here at Theory. We're a thesis-driven firm. We spend a lot of time researching these different areas. I think to your point around like what's seeing traction and what we're interested in, those things are sort of separate depending on your timeline and where you're investing. And obviously, we're investing for a long period of time. Today, I think you're seeing a ton of innovation. There's a bunch of companies that are growing from 0 to 10 million in ARR very quickly. A lot of them are around coding automation. I think the thing that's to be seen there really is switching costs, right? So I think switching costs are relatively low. And so AI has really changed the way businesses operate. People are able to operate engineering teams much more leanly. They don't have to hire as many employees. But kind of to get to your question, I think really where we're interested is in a company that's building at the intersection of those three things that I highlighted earlier. Within crypto and AI, I think you're starting to see people who are building and incorporating AI into their products. So it could be trading infrastructure. We're seeing a bunch of security companies that are using AI. Stablecoin workflows are being automated using AI. And again, so I just really think the underlying theme is that every business will have an AI component. And so there's quite a few intersections we're excited about. We're really kind of we have a core focus on 3 or 4. But again, I think like every business will have an AI component.
If you had to pick one company to watch, what would it be? And if it's okay if it's one you've invested in, we can disclose it. What's one that you're really excited about right now?
And that's a really tough question. I actually think like one concern again to the point I have is like that if switching costs are so low, the cost of software development collapses over time. And so I think if you are building a company, I think there has to be like inroads to competitive moats or like high returns on invested capital. I use some of the coding tools every single day. I think that has the greatest product market fit today. But I do genuinely believe that we'll see agents that are executing trades on behalf of users. We'll see agents that are automating a ton of workflow within specific verticals, both kind of sexy and unsexy. But I think if I were to make a bet, it is that like we will have agents that are completing tasks on behalf of users. And so there's like a number of different verticals that are extremely exciting. The ones that I've been spending the most time in are data related, right? Because we really do believe that data is kind of the core underpinning for all of these companies. And as these businesses start to build competitive moats, really it's going to be the IP that they own that allows them to build more proficient agents and models over time.
All right, Spencer, thanks so much for joining the show. We're going to be talking all about agents later on from multiple different perspectives. One with Tristan Thompson, the NBA player, and one with Shaw Walters from Eliza Labs. So stick around. Spencer, thanks again for joining the show.
Thanks, Jen.
Those Theory Ventures partner, Spencer Farrar. All right, we are going to keep the ball rolling here. If you've just joined us, we're talking all about AI and crypto on this special broadcast. We are on CoinDesk.com. We are across all of CoinDesk socials. If you want to chat with us, if you have a question for one of our guests, just put it below this video and we will be sure to get to it. Up next, Halliday wants developers to never, ever, ever have to write a smart contract again. And investors have made a $20 million bet on the company in a Series A. Joining us now is Halliday CEO and co-founder Griffin Dunaif. Hey, Griffin.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me on the show.
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for being here with us. Now, let's just start at the very beginning here. I said that Halliday, your company, wants to eliminate the need for smart contracts so that developers never have to do that again. How are you making that possible?
Absolutely. Well, so we built a protocol, and you're exactly correct. It lets you write business logic in hours instead of years. And the way we did that is by building a workflow engine that lets you compose blockchain services, application logic, and off-chain services together in a higher level workflow engine and runtime. So as opposed to writing the nitty-gritty Solidity code and SVM code that people are used to, you can just stitch together Lego pieces to build your application.
Okay, so I'm assuming the idea here is that for developers who previously found it difficult to do this or who weren't Web3 native can now start building Web3 applications. Talk to me about the desire there. Is this helping folks who were previously not interested in developing blockchain apps enter the space, or what's the kind of reception you're getting?
Absolutely. You know, there's been tremendous interest. I think over the last couple of weeks, we've seen over 350,000 people sign up for early access. So that there's an appetite and a desire to get involved with on-chain programming, right? The blockchain is very visible, but it's not very accessible. And the reason I like to say that is, you know, when you think about smart contract engineering or building a blockchain app, it's more similar to hardware engineering than software engineering, right? You have to spec up front. You have to, it's immutable once it's deployed. It costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to get audits. And once it's out there, it's a rocket ship. And if anything goes wrong, you can't really change it. And so we like to say that we're bringing about the software era of blockchain. We're letting you quickly compose applications without having to understand all the nitty-gritty details so that you can, for the first time, get started with a simple application really in hours as opposed to, the 3 to 6 to 12 months to get up and running. And we think that unlocks a huge number of use cases and people that just didn't have the time to invest up front in building these more complex applications.
Now, I got to ask you about compliance and safety. We kicked off the show talking a little bit about that. Some have raised concerns about integrating AI into blockchain development because of safety and compliance. How are you thinking about that? How are you thinking about oversight?
Totally. Yeah. And one of the things that we like to think about too, in the context of AI is like, look, AI and blockchain are inherently synergistic. A blockchain is a computer. It operates on data. AI is rocket fuel for any sort of computer or data system. So there's no inherent non-compatibility between blockchains and AI systems. I think what we've noticed, though, is that the entire world of software has rapidly adopted AI systems. So Web2 SaaS, all the major cloud platforms, but we haven't seen the same level of adoption in blockchain. And I think there's two reasons. One, we're still stuck in the hardware era of blockchain. It's impossible to ask an LLM to write a smart contract on the fly. That's not going to be safe. That's probably not compliant as well. The second part of it is the custody model of blockchains, and the trust model of blockchains is very different than a server that a company owns and can operate on, right? Their data is the data in their cloud, and they're allowed to use an LLM on it. But you can't send your money and your hard-earned assets to an AI system. One, you don't have any control over the guardrails. And two, it's the compliance structure. You're not allowed to take custody of somebody's assets on your server and then put an LLM on it. So you need this interstitial layer, this intermediate guardrail layer that is designed to let AI do things, but in a safe and compliant way. And because this hasn't existed for the last couple of years, We really haven't seen any meaningful AI on blockchain. And my greatest concern is that the rest of the world is getting used to AI tools, and that's going to become a standard expectation of any SaaS platform. And if blockchain doesn't have that, it might be hard at some point to catch up. And blockchain may resemble 2017 SaaS versus what we expect now in 2025.
Give me a timeline. If you look towards the future, how long is it before, the future you're building towards exists and is a reality for folks who are both building applications and folks who are using them?
Yes, I mean, that future is here. We've already gone live with over 35 clients who are using the workflow protocol through our first party product that we call Holiday Payments, and it's powered by this underlying technology. And over the next couple of months, we're bringing on design partners and rolling out the underlying technology so people can build their own applications in hours as opposed to years. But this is an ambitious project. It involves not just one blockchain, it involves the hundreds and thousands of blockchains that now exist, and making those all accessible to developers and AI systems, giving AIs the semantics to go take actions on chain, right? Like AIs need tools to go do things. They're tool use machines. None of those tools are formatted and properly compatible with LLMs in a safe and reliable way. So this is also the work that we're doing, and you'll see that hit the market in the next couple of months and over the course of the year. And we think that's very, very important for blockchain to remain compatible with the cutting edge of software, which it hasn't to this day.
All right, Griffin, when I introduced you, I said you raised a $20 million Series A. It was led by A16Z Crypto. Talk to me about how you're going to be spending that money over the next year.
Yeah, like I was saying, it's primarily on research and development, expanding our engineering team, expanding our go-to-market. I think broadly, if you think about what we're doing, we're trying to build a new foundational computing platform. We want to build a new way to build applications, right? I think the primary issue right now, and we've worked a lot on the user experience, but in working on the user experience, we realized it's so hard to build the good user experiences because the developer experience is incredibly challenging. Like that's why there are no apps. People are talking about if only we made it easier to use the blockchain, we'd have 1 billion users. Well, I actually think the bigger problem is there are no apps enticing people to use the blockchain. And one of the primary reasons there are no apps is because building an app takes millions of dollars, audits, smart contracts, deploying to a bunch of networks. Like the work is just piling and piling and piling. And we've done the math. It's like a decade of engineering time to get up and running across 5, 10, 15 blockchains. And nobody's built a general purpose platform to do that in hours. And so we're talking about a 10,000x cost reduction, but building the machine that lets you build your app in hours, not years, is a tremendous undertaking. It's almost like building an operating system. So we raised money to just go all in on that direction. And it just takes a lot of time and effort.
Well, that sounds like a really big undertaking. And as you're explaining that, I was thinking, is $20 million even enough? I mean, what's your estimated cost? What's it going to take to get to, I'm going to ask it again, to get to that future that you're describing?
So it's enough for where we are right now and what we want to do. We're well capitalized. We're growing the team rapidly. You're always limited by how quickly you can deploy the capital you have, and we're at capacity. But for the long-term vision of the company, absolutely not. We're gonna raise more. The project is ambitious. It's going to require more resources, but it's a crawl, walk, run. We'll start with the use cases now. We'll grow the technology and the platform, and then we'll be out and continue growing the company. But it's going to take a lot of time and resources over many years to build a system like this. It's like building the early version of the cloud. It's not a 1-year project.
All right, Griffin, good luck. We will be following your journey, and thank you for joining the show.
Thank you.
That was Holiday CEO and co-founder Griffin.
Want market-moving insights at your fingertips? Download the CoinDesk app for news, prices, videos, and events on the go.
Oh, right. Our next guest is going to be speaking at Consensus Toronto, CoinDesk's flagship event happening from May 14th to 16th in Toronto, Canada. Lisa Loud is an executive director at the Secret Network Foundation and has dedicated her career to AI ethics and harnessing the technology for real-world applications. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jen. Great to be here.
It's great to have you here. Now, I think people who are watching might be wondering what the Secret Network is. So let's just start there.
Sure. Yeah, Secret Network has been on mainnet since 2020, and the name gives you a bit of a clue. We are doing on-chain encryption, and we've been doing that for a long time because blockchains are transparent and real-world applications are not transparent. We don't want our data being broadcast to the public, to everyone. So what we've been building is encryption on-chain for quite some time, smart contracts and data protection.
Talk to me about some of the concerns that you have when it comes to privacy first AI on the blockchain. What are you really looking to address through your position at the Secret Network?
Yeah, great question. So I like to say that AI is one of the most powerful technologies that we've seen in the world. And as a powerful technology, it really has the power to change our lives in a huge way. If you think about it, there are maybe 30 diseases that most of us die from, right? And so AI has the power to knock those out one by one, to figure out the solutions to those. And so we don't need to die of the same diseases anymore, which is an incredibly wonderful vision of the future, right? But at Secret Network, we also recognize that there's this powerful technology could also take us to the brink of extinction. And that's my biggest fear about AI is that it's so powerful. If we don't harness it in the right way, it really has the power to disrupt our lives in a terrible way. I can say more about like why that is so important if you want to follow that thread.
Yeah, I do want to follow up, but I want to ask you this first. You know, you mentioned AI's ability to solve some of the biggest, I guess, health crises in the world. And what's going on with 23andMe right now makes me ask this. AI has that ability to take the information that we've gathered over many, many years of health research and come up with solutions. How do you think about protecting the data that it would need to come to these solutions and solve these crises?
That's exactly the right question to ask, because I think what we're doing is we're seeing that we have to feed data into AI to get these good results out. So the 23andMe data set is hugely valuable, but that information is also harmful on an individual basis. If you think about my DNA being in there, in that database, and then someone can actually access it and know so much about me, that's a terrible outcome for anybody. And I think that it's even worse because not only is our health and our DNA, our personal data being fed into that, but our preferences. In the future, I think we're going to talk to our AI agent more than anything else. And that agent is going to learn about us, not just our medical history, but our preferences, our behaviors, our patterns, our theology, our political views, like everything will be known by that agent in order, same thing as you mentioned with DNA, the more information you feed into it, the more effective an AI agent can be or AI can be. So as we feed more and more information in, we're exposing ourselves more and more. And the solution is that actually what we're building at Secret now, which is confidential AI infrastructure, meaning that I can feed all my information into the AI, but I have a viewing key that allows me to view that information, that allows anyone else that I give the viewing key to access that information, but it's not generally available to the public.
Let's dig a little bit deeper into that. I think for the audience to understand what it means to have this confidential network, we need to understand what happens in some of the other networks that we're starting to use. So if we take, I don't know, a ChatGPT, for example, I would say is probably the most popular one. When I'm putting information into ChatGPT to do whatever, I don't know, help me come up with a grocery list or write an email, what's happening to that information and how can it be used?
Well, if you read the terms and conditions, it's quite scary, actually. That information, you're giving over access to it. Um, you no longer have exclusive access to that information. It's now the company behind ChatGPT or behind any of the LLMs will now have the right to use that information in whatever way they choose to. And we can say, oh, well, it's a big company, I trust them. But that's probably not, we've learned that's probably not a good approach to data. We don't want to trust other people with our data. So what's happening on the back end is all of that information is being aggregated, which is fine as long as it's anonymized, but it's not necessarily anonymized, and it can be tied back to us, can be used to sell us things, it can be used to feed us information, to influence our perspectives and our viewpoints. It's quite scary when you think about how much power we're giving away in sharing our data. So I'm very leery of using ChatGPT myself.
I have to ask you this. I feel like we almost have been trained to give away our data. And as long as something is made easy for us, we give it away for that simplicity and the ease of getting whatever task we need done. Do you think people care enough or understand enough about what's going on to make them care?
No, I don't actually. I don't think people understand enough about what's going on. I don't think people are, it's the convenience versus security, convenience versus privacy dilemma, right? If it's convenient and I can get something right now, then how bad could it be, right? I'm just going to share my information. I'll figure it out later. So I think you're absolutely on track there. We have to make privacy convenient. We have to, and with secret AI, you can do a one-line code change. Instead of you calling ChatGPT, you can call Secret AI, and then you protect all of the data. So all of the applications, the developers that are building with ChatGPT, they could instead build with Secret AI, same convenience, same access to information, same immediacy and turnaround, but now it's confidential. So you have to make it convenient. You have to make it super easy, or people are just not going to care.
And let's dig a little bit deeper into that confidentiality piece. How is it made confidential? I know we're introducing blockchain technology here to make that data that's fed into it more confidential, but just lay that out for us.
Yeah, sure. So, not to get too technical, but Secret Network uses TEEs, Trusted Execution Environments, and we use that in conjunction with the NVIDIA H100 GPUs or H200s, but essentially a graphics card along with a trusted execution environment. They lock together, they can talk to other nodes on the network, but the information inside that trusted execution environment is not encrypted. As soon as it goes out of that environment, it is encrypted. So if you have a viewing key, you can get it out unencrypted. But if you don't have a viewing key, then it's not accessible to you. So as we use blockchain, it gets a little more complicated because you need to be able to communicate between nodes. And that's why we use the trusted execution environment, because it allows the nodes to create a shared secure enclave where they can pass information back and forth unencrypted, but it never goes outside of that walled garden unless there's a viewing key present.
All right, Lisa, and just before we wrap up here, I have to ask you, if you were advising a founder who's building an AI crypto startup today, what elements of privacy infrastructure would you insist that they have to bake in from day one?
I would say if you have an agent, you need it to be a confidentially backed agent, because that agent will have its own identity. It will be almost like your twin in the world. And if you don't build it with back end confidentiality, once you open that barn door and your data's gone, you can't get it back in. So I'd say anyone who's building an agent today or anything in AI needs to consider confidentiality and confidential infrastructure as the very first element, as a foundational element of what they're building. Otherwise, we're not looking at a good future here.
Well, on that note, Lisa, I'm gonna let you go, and we'll see you in Toronto. You're gonna be at Consensus Toronto, one of our
Yes.
speakers. I hope to continue the conversation there. Hopefully we can build towards a better future.
Thank you so much.
That was Secret Network Foundation Executive Director Lisa Loud. As I just mentioned, you can hear more from her at Consensus Toronto. You can get your tickets today to join us. We will be there from May 14th to 16th. Tickets are available at consensus2025.coindesk.com. All right, let's bring things into the real world now and talk about how the technology we've been talking about on this stream can be applied to real world use cases. NBA star Tristan Thompson and I caught up recently to talk about how AI is transforming sports. He's the Chief Content Officer and lead advisor to Tracy AI, a new AI agent he helped found to give fans a deeper understanding of basketball analytics. Let's take a listen. Tristan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Jen. Thank you.
All right, let's talk about Tracy AI. How do you go from athlete to tech founder? Talk me through that journey.
I mean, for me as an athlete, I think as more athletes, how the sports world is changing. I think we've done such a good job entering a career at such a young age, being able to be at this forefront of sports. But like Father Time, it's undefeated, and your career is here today, gone tomorrow. Not all of us are not as fortunate as LeBron James have played 22 years. For me, 14 years is a blessing, and try to continue that for as long as I can. But for us, I think they always preach to us, what's next, right? What's next? What else can you do? Because at the end of the day, most careers you're done by your mid 30s, and most adults don't reach their stride until like their mid 30s, right? So that's another 30 years of life that you want to do something productive. And for me, I've always been into financial literacy. That was something that I always preached in the locker room, preached to younger guys. And then with me understanding more about crypto now and getting into that space more, just because I feel like that's the future of finance. There's so many different layers, and obviously right now with this time, obviously AI became a big thing, became a big narrative. You see it all over in the media, whether it's from Elon Musk to President Trump to so on and so forth, teams talking about it. For me, it was like, how can I be in this space and really capitalize and really dive into it?
When you're talking to those younger players, when you're talking in the locker room about tech, like crypto and AI, let's talk about specifically crypto and AI. How are they reacting to it? Like, are they all bought in? Are they skeptical? What are those conversations like?
I mean, I think like anybody, right? After the whole FTX crash, I think it put a sour taste in everyone's mouth about crypto and the Web3, just because to the naked eye and to the normal people, it just seems like a big scam. But like anything in life, right? You have good cops, bad cops. You have good teachers, bad teachers. In the crypto space, you have people that are really doing some great things in the space and actually helping the community. And then unfortunately, you have the bad apples. And unfortunately, that bad apple became a big apple, and it really put a sour taste. So for me, it's more just educating and telling people, like, just giving that narrative and giving that kind of a analogy, right? And that's how you kind of grab their ear. But you also educate them to show them, what are the benefits of crypto and how can it be better than just a centralized exchange and banks.
Let's talk about your latest venture now, Tracy AI. Just lay the
Mhm.
foundation for me here. How does it work?
So basically, Tracy AI is, so the way it came, I think the way it came up about is sports is one of the highest forms of entertainment. Everyone knows that. Even in crypto, most people I meet, they love basketball. I was so surprised and shocked, but like I was like, okay, so sports is great, technology is great, but how come basketball hasn't dived into the AI space as much? So a red flag came, a green light came to me, and I said, how can I merge the two and basically develop something of a real world asset? Because I think that's the narrative right now. Something that's a real world asset that can actually help people in general. So for me, was like, why not create basically a 3-day AI agent that is a sports commentator that doesn't just give you just like, hey, the score is 20 to 55. No, that can give you like in-depth analytics where at the end of the day, most fans, they want just that 1% of how can I get in the locker room to know what the pros know. So Tracy I, that was kind of the mantra of that. How can we help fans that are sports fans, that are basketball fans, how can we give them more knowledge and stats where they can dive in and feel like they're more inside our locker room? Because that's what fans always yearn for. That's why sports talk radio does well. That's why ESPN does well. It's all because they're taking people that have some insight in these pro locker rooms and being able to give it to the masses.
Do you envision a world where people are using Tracy AI while they're filling out their brackets to give them some kind of intel so that they can, win in either a friendly bet with their friends or some kind of pool they've entered into?
Yeah, no. So if you go on Tracy's X page, Twitter X page, depends on how you want to say it. She gives right now currently some predictions of what she feels like how the game's gonna go and trend towards. Her turnover rate's pretty good. It's like 70%, and she's spot on her predictions. But I think it's like anything, right? I think use her as a vehicle, like you said, it's like the barbershop, right? When me and you are bantering and we're thinking, who you think's gonna win? Whether it's your NCAA bracket or who you think's gonna win Thursday night on ESPN, two teams matchups, you could go to her and ask her these questions, and she's going to give you her thought and opinion based on the in-depth analytics which support her idea. And the cool thing about Tracy, it's not just like Chat GBT where it's just like, who do you think will win the game? And they're like, oh, because one team averages 10 points more per possession. Like she actually has a personality where it's kind of like you get this like attitude and a little sassiness, because I want it to be something where it's going to draw people to want to engage with her more, because she's a statistician at its highest level, right? So the better your stats is, the more she likes you as a player. The worse your stats is, the less she's going to talk great about you. But like, I like that because it's almost like imagining a Stephen A. Smith, Malika Andrews on steroids in terms of having all this analytic data and be able to give it to you in a personality form.
Well, the conversation around AI agents and crypto is really like, one day are we going to have AI agents that are trading on our behalf, right? And so I got to ask you, with your knowledge in crypto, will Tracy AI have a crypto integration at any point in time where maybe she is wagering based on what she knows on behalf of the folks who are interacting with her?
Yeah, so the cool thing about Tracy, she's automated. She's created her own. She's her own person, right? So as she continues to build up and she's starting with predictions, I could see her getting into sports betting and other sports, right? And diving into that because if you look online, there's another AI agent called Billy Bets, and they're doing bets and doing prediction markets under virtuals. And with Tracy, with the amount of data that she has and how much she's basically creating her own personality, she's on the go. She's doing her own thing. So like I could see her really diving in and really giving people like her ideas and picks and spreads. Like she's her own version of like a FanDuel for other sports, not just football, soccer, baseball. You never know what it is.
Where do you get the data from to train Tracy?
So we have APIs of like very high like basketball analytics. Um, we have some people on staff that have worked in the past for like analytical companies that have access to this data, because that's important, right? You can't give false data, right? You can't give BS to people because then it's not going to work, right? So for us, it's more so about making sure we provide the most information and accurate as possible so that people feel comfortable to keep coming back, right? If someone gives you an opinion and they're wrong 3 times, you're never going to use them again.
That's true. Now, Tristan, I got to ask you, we talked about AI for fans in sports. Do you envision a world where coaches and teams are using AI to make decisions on what's going on the court or the field?
I mean, so I did an event during All-Star Weekend with Tracy to debut, and we've had multiple NBA teams reach out, curious and wanting to almost use Tracy AI for their own franchise and teams. Whether it is, for the way I looked at Tracy's, that it was, for me, it was like a 3-layer thing, right? It's help retail space with fan engagement and help them understand more in terms of like how the pros think. For players and current players or former players, how can she help you improve your game or tell you areas of that you need improvement if you're going through a shooting slump, if you're not if your moves that you're working on is not working, or how can you improve your percentages throughout the game? And from a franchise perspective, how can, if you watched a few weeks back, Daryl Morey of the Sixers, even though the Sixers record is not the best right now, he mentions that he uses AI to help curate his roster in free agency. Obviously, the roster's not where it needs to be, but it's still the early steps. But that just shows you that there's so many different layers. So for me, from a front office perspective, I could see, GMs and presidents looking and asking, how can I bolster my roster? And the cool thing about Tracy is that she's gonna be very transparent and honest. It's not like with ChatGPT that has no feel or emotion. She's gonna probably say to you, like, if your record's 18 and 62, she's gonna be like, you're gonna need a lot of help to improve this roster. But maybe you need to keep this guy, his the numbers that equate to winning. He fits this mold, but some other guys that might be scoring more points per game aren't helping your team win. So I wanted to develop that personality where she can almost help you be an asset to help curate your roster and improve your roster. And for me, what I always try to preach to people is that, 'cause I had an interview the other day with another gentleman, and I said, my goal for Tracy is not to take your job away, it's to be an asset to you, to help you improve, right? Because I'm all about team, right? Like, how can everyone improve their team in life in general? Because no one's a one-man show. If you're a one-man show, you're probably not that successful unless you got lucky.
Now, before I let you go, Tristan, I have to ask you, I think I 100% understand the world that you envision for sports when it comes to AI, but what do you think the best use case is for crypto in sports, whether that's fan tokens or NFTs or straight investing? Or I know that there was a time when athletes were putting some of their salary into Bitcoin. What's the best use case for crypto and sport?
Crypto and sports, the best use case. I think it's multiple things, right? I think I like the fact that a couple of athletes were taking their salaries and putting it into crypto and seeing the opportunity of growth. Obviously, they believed on longing it and understanding it's holding for the long run. With AI in sports, I think you always, and especially with Tracy, we're creating a program where we can give back. And with Tracy, what we're going to do is that as she develops tokens or develops revenue, we want her to give back to the community. And a cool thing that we were thinking is that, every month, whatever she's gained revenue wise, have her donated to a local charity of one of the 30 NBA teams, right? So one month she might be giving it to the Boys and Girls Club in Memphis. The next month she might be Oklahoma City food bank drive. I think things like that where you give back to the community, because at the end of the day, for me as an athlete, we're all about community and taking care of our people and our fans, because without them, we're nobody, right? So with this AI project, I'm almost putting together where she has the brain of how I would think or how athletes should think, but she's just giving you the stats detail as a commentator.
Tristan, thank you so much for sitting down with me and joining the show.
All right. Thanks, Jen. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, we are back. That was NBA champion Tristan Thompson. We had a much longer conversation where we talked about some of his crypto investments and his ethos on crypto. You can find that on CoinDesk.com and CoinDesk's YouTube channel. All right, we are getting ready to wind down our crypto and AI show. I want to thank everyone who has watched so far. We have one more interview to go. I want to remind you that you have the ability to interact with us. So if you have questions or comments, put them below this video. We will try to get to them during the interview. I want to welcome now Shaw Walters to the show. Shaw is the founder of Eliza Labs, creators of the Eliza open source framework and team behind AI16Z. We're going to be talking all about the future of AI-led trading. Hey, Shaw.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Now, we've talked about many different angles when it comes to crypto and AI. I think our audience is most interested in this one. We're talking about the evolution of AI-led training. So I want to start here with you. In your mind, in your vision for the future, how will AI agents evolve over the next year?
Oh, I mean, in all kinds of ways. I guess that's a very broad question. I think over the next year, what we're going to see is a lot of deployment of like things we actually use. I mean, this is my hope, at least. And so, I think LLMs, the core driving these agents, has progressed like farther than the actual ways that we're exploiting them. Like kind of just by the nature of the physics of it, we have these crazy new models come out and they have all this new capability. And then we're like, okay, well, how do we actually use that and build something really capable with it. And so I think that we finally have a generation of AI models that are cheap enough and powerful enough that we can just run them a lot and do quite a lot of processing. And so I think I haven't seen anything, including the stuff that I've built, that's actually pushed like the models to what I would say is the far limits of what they're capable of. And we're just starting to see a product cycle where we're like, oh wow, wait, these are actually pretty good. Obviously, programming was the first hit by this. Before, 3 years ago, I'd be like, yeah, it'll be good at someday at this. And now we pretty much all use some form of AI programming, and I think that's been a massive shift. And then that's just going to happen for all kinds of other things as well. So I think that's the biggest shift that I see.
Earlier on in the show, we talked a little bit about policy, compliance, governance, how data is handled. As someone who is really building and is really focused on building in this space, talk to me about how you're looking at some of the broader ethical challenges when it comes to building AI agents that solve many of the things that we've talked about today.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. Certainly, when we talk about AI agents, it's kind of like with this assumption that a lot of the nuts and bolts problems are solved, but there's still like, how do I give an agent my credit card number and know that they're going to use it right? How do I give an agent access to something and know, like just very basic, like simple, practical problems, not even like the theoretical of like, do I trust the agent? But like literally, how do I give, like, is there a window that I put it in? Do I just send it in a direct message? And I think that a lot of those kinds of like, how do we deal with secrets? How do we deal with roles? Who do I let talk to my agent or give it control? I think those are just like wide open questions that like we haven't even really been able to get into yet, because we've been in this like paradigm of like, oh wow, it works. Oh, there's a chatbot and it responds to me. Well, now we're like, okay, past that, like now we put the chatbot in a room with 10,000 people and it has responsibilities. Well, you just get a whole other set of like very small practical problems. And my day is just getting splashed with cold water every day. Like, yeah, policy matters and this stuff is all coming and AGI, all that. But like, man, I really just need this thing to like call the right tool when I ask it to. And I think we're all still there. So I think this is a great time to approach policy and like the more scary sides of this technology, because it's just not that scary yet. Yeah, sure. In 10 years, like an AI agent with, nobody knows what it's doing, like I'd be a little nervous. And maybe we should really think about how much autonomy do we want to give systems? How much agency do we want to give them? Do we want things to live forever on chain or in these ways that we can't like take down? And I think we should have we should have these questions, answer them in the open. And that's always been our thing. I would say I'm a pretty hardcore programmer, but I'm also kind of a performance artist. Like I try to be like pull things out, make them edgy. Our whole thing has been like, let's explore what, where does this go? Like virtual girlfriends and autonomous investors and, like, okay, like let's see what that looks like. Even if the technology isn't quite there in the way that we all know it will be, I think we can very easily deduce where it's going once we start to see these like social problems happen in front of us. Like a good example would be like a lot of people have like resurrected their family members or people they knew into AI systems, and that's a really thorny like moral. Is that okay? Is that good? Who can you resurrect? Can you resurrect somebody who doesn't want to be turned into an AI bot? Really complicated questions, and I don't really have the answer to them. But I do think that part of my role is to try to open up the conversation there. So beyond the programming, we should really be sure, like, okay, we are building something we want to exist, not just writing bits for fun, but like, okay, the world that we end up with once we have the final version of this technology is the world that we want to have.
So, the conversation that we've had for so long in the crypto space is whose role is it to come up with fair frameworks when it comes to policy and regulation? How fast should we come up with those fair frameworks? And how does it affect innovation? How does it affect national security? I want to bring that conversation over to AI. I know you are a builder, you are focused on building, but when you think about the products you're building, who should have a voice in creating these frameworks if we draw a parallel between how the crypto industry has engaged or not engaged with government in the past?
I mean, I think that we probably all want everyone to be pretty engaged with the conversation around, especially around AI. I think crypto is like, it's something that you could probably go your whole life and not even ever interact with because we have a working financial system. But AI is like definitely gonna be in everything, and it's like almost unavoidable to any app you open and there's like a chat bot. Like, okay, great. So we definitely all need to think about like, well, the world is going to change a lot. And do you want to live in a world where like, robots are walking around and we start like rebuilding the world for robots? Or do you want to live in a human world and really make sure the robots like adapt into our world? My personal like ethical fight is that I really want to make sure that AI systems are open and kind of grow up in front of us and around us, so that we start to get used to working with AI, to integrating it into our society in like a not scary way, and to make sure that the AI more adapts to us and to our world than to like us, turning into I don't know, like robots basically, So we should definitely, yeah. I mean, like there are security conversations here. Like this is definitely a national security concern. If I can run a million bots that can go overwhelm my enemy's social medias and convince all of them to vote the way that I want, like I would probably, as a nation, I might use that. And we should really worry about like our nations using this technology to influence ourselves, our peoples and each other and all this stuff. And I don't think that there's like we can't just any answer that's like really simple, like it should just be this way or it should be that way. I kind of feel like the answers to how we deal with AI in our society are probably just almost inherently more complex. And to say like it should be like this, you're almost inherently wrong. I think a lot of people say like, well, you shouldn't have AI girlfriends. And I said, well, what about somebody who's like paralyzed and has no friends and is, gonna die alone? Like, you're gonna say that they can't enjoy love and feel connected to something? Or, well, you shouldn't use AI for therapy. It's like, well, what about someone who's never gonna see a therapist and can't afford $200 an hour therapy? Is talking to a chatbot worse than just holding it in your head? And I think that you can always find these, well, what ifs that lead me to think that AI is a fundamentally personal technology, and like the best way to ethically choose here is to think about like, well, what is going to give us what we want without harming others, which is probably a pretty good metric anyway. But yeah, I would be very wary of anyone who's like AI should do this or people should do this with AI, because it's just not that simple.
I was going to ask you a follow-up on something you said earlier, but given the rest of your answer, I think I know it, but I'll ask anyways. You talked about AI integrating into our lives so that there could be less fear around this. And I was going to ask you if the fear around AI is warranted, and it sounds like your answer is probably yes, given how many uncertainties there are out there.
I think that whether the things go well or not is actually down to our generation. It's not the technology. Technology isn't good or bad. It's how we use it, of course. And how we use it is it's not always like, oh, I mean, there's so much technology that could hurt people. Like you could so easily hurt 1,000 people, and it actually happens pretty rarely. And that like there haven't been a whole lot of nuclear explosions since we started testing them. I'm generally like, I think technology is not as bad as we fear it to be historically. Like for every major technology that's come out, people were afraid of like books, printing presses. People were afraid of automobiles. It is obviously a very different and like way more impacting technology than maybe anything else that's come before. It's like, oh, we could actually create ourselves. Like, okay, that's probably different. But at the same time, like the value of getting this right is, well, what if our lives aren't just about working all the time? What if we can pursue our interests and like understand, why am I here? What is the nature of reality? What matters? Like, what is God? And those are questions I get to ask myself like 5 minutes a week. I could spend my whole life doing that, but the reality is that I have to work a lot. And most of that work will be done by AIs in the future. So if it's done by AIs in the future, then like, does it matter? Like, does it matter that I write this code, or like create this graphic for my website, or an AI does it? I don't know. I tend to think we're arriving into a future that we create, and we can, if we see these things coming and we handle them right, it's going to be great. Like, you will get to do exactly what you want to do with your life, and there will be enough. There will be abundance. And if 5 people control everything and we live in like a weird UBI dystopia where we get like a government handout, it might not be so great.
Yeah.
So maybe it really actually is down to us, and it really matters what the choices we make.
I want to wrap it up here. I know we're running out of time. We were supposed to talk about trading, but I think this has been a much more interesting conversation. When I think about AI, I often think about it as not really the next iteration of technology or an extension of technology. I really think about it as the future of humankind. And I want to hear your perspective on that, because it sounds like you're thinking about it in the same way.
Yeah, I come from an AI world where a lot of people seem to treat AI like some sort of god, like, oh, we're creating God. I say it's like the exact opposite. We are taking all human knowledge, all human creation, every one of us our achievements, and taking that and like gluing it together into one automation of our humanity that can do all the stuff that's already been done. AI cannot really do new things, but it can automate everything that's already been done. That's humans been doing for 1,000 years, or it's written online 1,000 times. And I think those are the things implicitly that we might not want to do as much. We might want to focus on the things that AI isn't so good at because there's just not the data there for it. But also, like, I don't need it for that. So yeah, I think this is about reshaping humanity more than like creating God.
Shah, we appreciate you joining the stream. I guess headlining the show, really taking us to the end. So thanks so much for joining me. And I hope we get to continue the conversation sometime soon. It was fascinating.
Sure, anytime. Thanks for having me.
That was Eliza Labs founder, Shah Walters. All right, we are at the end of the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for sticking with us. We explored AI and crypto from numerous different angles, and I hope that you walk away from this show with insights, thoughts, questions that help you understand what the future of AI and crypto might look like for you. If you enjoyed the conversations we had here today, we're going to be having similar conversations at Consensus in Toronto. I've said it a few times during the show, but just in case you didn't catch it, we're going to be in Toronto from May 14th to 16th for CoinDesk's flagship conference, Consensus. You can get tickets at consensus2025.coindesk.com. I'm Jen Sanasi. Thanks for sticking with me. We'll see you next time.